Hi YouTube, RobberNuts1 here, and I have got for you episode 5 of Arrow, so let's get started. Episode 5 Damaged has the theme of Oliver's damaged mental state and how this is affecting his life post-Island. And this is sort of elaborated more and we get more reveals about what happened to Oliver on the island. Oliver is arrested by Detective Lance and is put on trial for being the vigilante, as it's explained that Oliver was grabbing a hood and on camera and in episode 4. Laurel agrees to be Oliver's DA, and the two spend the rest of the episode figuring out how they feel about each other. Meanwhile, Diggle has to act as the vigilante to cover Oliver and stop an arms deal which is occurring in Starling City. It's established in this episode that Oliver may have post-traumatic stress disorder, according to a DA who acts as the accuser of the story. Oliver states that he is not the Hood, contrary to what Detective Lance believes, and goes as far as to do a polygraph test in front of him in order to determine if he's telling the truth or not. Meanwhile, on the island, we see Oliver and I think he's called Yusei. The man, I can't remember his name. I'm sorry, folks. I can't remember his name. So yeah, the man that is Shadow's father. I'll leave a tag somewhere when I know what his name is. I'm sorry, just can't remember it from the top of my head. And Oliver starts developing a relationship with this man. And they have a mentor-prodigy relationship in this episode, which was really nice to see. But, so, Oliver is kidnapped and tortured by Deathstroke, who makes his appearance in this episode. Deathstroke is very menacing, and although he doesn't talk, we can see the sadistic torture scenes, but, hang on. Although he doesn't talk, his sadistic torture scene was brilliant. And, we can see. I think that when an actor is able to portray things through their eyes, like they can act through their eyes, that they are really, really good actors. And the man playing Deathstroke was just absolutely brutal. Like, he was sadistically torturing Oliver in this episode, which was really good. And there is a part in the middle of the episode during Oliver's polygraph where his torture is brought to light, and the scene was really gripping and really emotional and felt very tense and powerful, which was really good. Ultimately, Oliver manages to get out of prison, but it was just a really, really powerful scene and I really liked it. Oliver and Laurel's relationship is discussed in this episode, and it's clear that they still like each other. However, Laurel states that nothing can happen between them. Now remember that line, people, because it is going to be something I constantly mention throughout the course of this season. Laurel is still very mean to Oliver, and she seems to side with the Hood on, like, the last episode stated that Laurel was afraid of the Hood, but this episode kind of contradicts that and actually seems to think that the Hood is doing a lot of good in the city, whilst Oliver is not and still views him as selfish. And this is the overall message of the story. Oliver planned for people to find out, so he could set up the fact it was impossible for him to be that person, and has Diggle act as the Hood to give him an alibi, which is quite smart, as in the Nolan films and in most superhero films, they never differentiate between characters. Like, basically, Bruce Wayne returns home, and then Batman shows up, and people don't seem to put the two and two together because of plot convenience. Well, I love the fact that this show addresses the fact that Oliver showed up, and then the Hood showed up, and people did put two and two together, which is a perfect way to show that this show is smarter than we think. Much of the story just ties up loose ends from the first 4 episodes. We see Oliver in the end fighting off the arms dealer, and although there isn't much Hood action in this episode, it was needed, as it changed the pace of the narrative, giving us time for some character development, as a lot of story was happening, but not a lot of character development, which was a nice change of pace to see that this episode was developing its character. Another story element is Walter's discovery of Moira fighting the Queen's Gambit. Walter reveals his knowledge after the Queen Consolidated Head of Security is murdered, which results in Walter leaving because of the lies Moira has been telling, giving a very real consequence for her actions. Although not necessarily Moira's fault, Moira is responsible for her part to play in the undertaking. She refers to herself as the good soldier, which is interesting as Moira has been willing to carry out the orders that Merlin has given her. With that, however, comes responsibility and consequence of those actions. Diggle states in the episode's closing lines, that Oliver and in part Moira didn't plan on people questioning them, on people having doubts on the actions that they take. Whilst Oliver takes responsibility for having to hurt the people he cares about, Moira doesn't. And she seems to accept and not take responsibility for the people she has hurt. Rather than taking the responsibility of that, she accepts it and has to watch the people she loves suffer for it, which is very interesting to see. Because Moira is very, very weak in the first half of the series. She doesn't really have a backbone. Once again, episode is fantastic. Great action sequences and choreography when there were some. The scene between Deadshot and Yao Fei, I think, is brilliant to see. The fight was brief but impressive, and I liked seeing where Oliver's training manifested itself. Having someone be the archer before Oliver carries a real significance for him. It becomes a legacy Oliver creates.